Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Cover Korea. dGon here, alongside Wolf, as we break things down here in the greatest region in the world. Week 10, only 2 weeks of regular season left here, Wolf, or week 11, only 2 weeks of regular season here, as 5 weeks in total before we get into Asian games. And yet again, Wolf, any streaks have been broken. The Dplus end up losing, but that's not the big news. The big news comes from the big team, the reigning world champions, the engine of esports, the artist formerly known as SKT T1, now T1, decided to make a change to the boy band. No, I'm not talking about the Spotify sponsorship that they have. They have benched Oner for Painter in their most recent game. It was said by Tom they wanted to see what they had out of Painter, but that caught everyone out of left field. And I just want to get your thoughts here. What'd you make of it?
So a lot of people don't know what T1's Challengers team, which is ironically called T1 Esports Academy, which sounds like it's a tier 3 team from Korean standpoint, because we go LCK CL or Challengers League and then the Academy series, which is underneath. But T1 chose the name Esports Academy, and then they have T1 Esports Academy. There's like an extra moniker added to it. I don't even remember what their third tier team is. But anyway, their Challengers team is arguably the best right now in Korea. So they're a really good roster. They played in KeSPA Cup and performed very well without T1's main roster. So they were playing against real rosters and winning games. And I think the big stars for this roster are Painter and Hete. So Painter's the jungler and Hete's the top laner. And they both look really good. And the style of this team is very reminiscent of like old Gen.G. Pretty slow but aggressive, like putting the pressure on but not flipping flipping objectives or fighting over Scuttle Crab unnecessarily, or going to, they don't play like Kanavi, right? They don't play that dive style. They don't go wild in terms of their aggression. They're not going between turrets in the early game. They play standard, and they play incredibly good League of Legends. Guti, the mid laner, has a really wide champion pool, so they have a lot of flexibility. And so I was commentating them in KeSPA Cup, being like, wow, this team's good. We'll see, when eventually T1's going to use their main roster, and they did, and they kind of did mixed games where against easier opponents they used their challengers roster, but otherwise in the main games use their main roster. And then after one of the weeks of KeSPA Cup, after they'd already swapped back to their main roster, I think it was not even, it was this past week. It was T1's first match day of the week, and when they played against Dplus, Painter was there. Like, I saw him at the arena. He was walking around with the team, and it was only Painter who was there. And it was before the match started, when we're in between series and everyone's walking around. I saw Painter's jersey, like the back of Painter. I checked it again, and it's really, it's really him. He's there. Sometimes players wear other players' jerseys when like there's an issue with laundry or whatever the case may be. So I had to do like a double take. Like, no, he's actually really here. And I was like, what does it mean? I asked a bunch of people around. I was like, what do you guys think? And everyone was like, I don't know. They're probably just like letting them look, take a look at the LCK. It's probably not a big deal. No one expected, even me who saw this, right, expected that Oner would be subbed out because he's Oner. And that's like the thing with T1 is if you make a substitution choice, there's going to be, it's going to be the discussion point of the week. We are starting our talk show with it because it's like the biggest news, right? Yep. I think Oner has had a pretty rough last few weeks. And I think Painter deserves a shot. I didn't think T1 would be brave enough to do it, but they announced it 30 minutes before their matchup against HLE, the rivalry matchup, the big one, right? Like, their matchup against Dplus was going to be big on paper, right? Because Dplus is really on form, and it's an old rivalry from the past, but, not as much relevant these days. And, it's not like this is the two teams that share X players and stuff like that. So when they announced it, we were all like, what? And the only thing I could think was, well, he was here on the Dplus day. Like, he was there. He didn't play. They didn't sub him in. Maybe they thought, like, if Oner has a bad game in game 1, we're going to send him right in there. Something like that. I don't know. I doubt it, because T1 doesn't normally operate that way since Danny was fired many years ago. But I think when we came to game one, we could break down the series against HLE. When it came to game one, he played very aggressively. He and Faker had like this insane, everyone knows the reposition play that happened in mid, but they had such insane synergy with each other, which usually takes like years to build some of the stuff they were doing, is what it looked like. It's like, man, Painter is just locked in with them. And we started wondering, like, have they been scrimming? Like, have they running this secretly for a while and nobody knew about it? I think the answer is not really, because that kind of word gets out. Fans see that, because if Oner's not scrimming, then he's playing solo queue. People start asking questions. This always happens, right? They usually can't keep this kind of stuff a secret. So I think they did similar to what Hanwha did with bluffing in a certain way, where they just are like, let's give him a shot. Let's do it. Let's let Oner see what he can learn. And that's kind of what T1 said in the press conference. And that's what they said. They said it was a coaching decision in the announcement, but later said, like, yeah, we're going to see like what we can learn and what Oner can learn and stuff like that. So game one looked great. I was like, wow, he and Faker are lined up. He's playing incredibly aggressively. He got lucky a little bit as well. Like, he survived with 10 HP in that mid exchange. Like, there were a lot of things that I think went very well for T1. There were some mistakes made by HLE. It's Kanavi. They do a little overextending. We've all seen it before. But then in games 2 and 3, he just didn't make the same impact. And the drafts held him back a little bit, but my kind of take was, okay, game 1, he's super fired up. He's got Pantheon. He's got the early game power. He and Faker are lined up. The game gets snowballed, and we don't even have to, like, wonder about what happens next, right? Because you're just like, okay, this game is done. He played really well. It's awesome. Like, we didn't even need to look into his champion, but we know what's going to happen in the next series, because it looks like he's got the momentum. They go to the next 2 games, he falls flat, right? And I think that was pretty jarring for a lot of people, because in the initial announcement, everyone's like, is Oner sick? What's going on? Even though the announcement like literally clearly said this is a choice we've made because we want to win, basically. Everyone's like, he must be sick. I'm like, I don't know. It literally says right here that's not the case. And then people are a little bit upset, a little bit worried. Then after game 1, everyone's like, we need more Painter. Then after game 2, people were like, I'm not sure. Then after game 3, everyone's like, I knew they shouldn't have benched Oner. And we did the whole cycle. I think Painter's good, but I don't know if this is the right choice to make this late in the season. Like, what does it mean? What does it do to your team's morale? Do T1 feel happier, feel better, feel like they're able to push the boundaries more with Painter? I don't think that's necessarily the case based on what we saw in this one best of 3.
Said in the post-game interview, will Oner continue to play in the next match? He said Painter will continue to compete in the upcoming matches. So wasn't just a one-off. I will, I guess, verify both your viewing of Painter there in Lowell Park earlier in the week, where we were like, what does this mean? And then the second one being, Oner was there on site even after that series loss, with smiles as the team went back to the back. No one else was smiling. He was smiling because I think he was talking to one of the coaches as they were walking back. But either way, like, didn't seem like it was a dire situation, something of that nature. And like you've kind of hit on already, I agree. It feels like there was no better time and no better way to create an authentic environment like Hanwha Life T1, the rivalry, on a Saturday showdown with lower stakes. Your season isn't on the line here. Your playoffs isn't on the line here, but it's a raucous crowd. I don't know if you knew this, but what felt like a hostile crowd. There were more Hanwha Life Esports fans in Lowell Park than there were T1 fans, which is unheard of. That is unheard of. But I was in the lobby watching to see what would happen. In game 1, it was silent. It was silent. Like, the T1 fans were outnumbered, 1, and 2, felt bad with how bad they were beating Hanwha Life Esports in game 1. There was like some golf claps. When was the last time you remember golf claps for T1's game? Like, never. That weird. Never happens.
It was weird.
So I'm fine with that look. For me, the confusing part is, why are we not benching Doran? Like, hasn't Doran been the one that is even more swingy in his highs and his lows? and not Oner. Oner has had one of his worst years for his career, which is still better than Gideon, than Charvel, than Pioshik, other than Pioshik's world's like little form thingy that was there. Like, he's probably a 7 out of 10 this year instead of a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10.
Most of the year he's been better than Cuz. Like, most of the year he's been better than Cuz.
And so, like, for me, it just feels confusing that was the call and that was the play. But I do like the idea of, well, now we know. And you were the one that brought it up the most when we had the listen live of like, holy cow, he is talking so much, like so much. It was very weird to hear a different voice in that T1 roster that we're not used to. And when we're looking at the player cams, Faker's voice wasn't moving. Carrier's voice wasn't moving. Pays never says anything. It was Painter, the one driving the conversation. And that was indeed fascinating. And I'm sure as a coach where you're trying to find all the different strategic advantages that you can get, was a different wrinkle that could come on in. But as we've seen in the past, what are you going to do with it? Like, how, you can still only field 5 players. And, you know, ultimately last year, Smash wasn't Guma, and they went with Guma. Painter isn't Oner. Are you going with Painter? I guess a big difference is that he's under contract for another 2 years. The one that is more under a microscope is Doran, but it was just confusing that was the move. Also, big side note, and this is my last one because I know I've done multiple side notes here, Wolf.
Oh,
I think the biggest winner, a massive win, the hugest win, is T1's PR team. Isn't it crazy that nothing got out until their official statement? Like, nothing got out. There was no journalist announcement. I searched like T1 Painter on Twitter. There had been no mention of it for like 5 days, like when someone saw him at the venue. But then after they mollywopped DK earlier in the week, they're like, oh, I guess Oner's starting. No one mentioned it, and then boom, they drop it. Like, shout outs for T1 PR, because they rarely get to do that, and they were fully on top of it this time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, they really they really have in the past kind of dropped the ball on all of this stuff, and then have been eaten alive by their fans, and then like triple down on trying to fix it and make things worse, which is a classic PR tactic of Korean companies in general, is to like appeal to loud fans and then make the other fans who were quiet even more mad, because it turns out they weren't mad before. But then anyway, that's been a topic we've talked on the show, I feel like, weekly, so I don't need to get into it further. But I think that it either will or it will not work, and we'll know soon. You know, I think a loss to Hanwha in a best of 3 was not ultimately Painter's fault alone, and there were still some draft issues for T1. And like the game 1 win was very volatile. Like, it was, the synergy between Faker and Painter was very good, but I think we can all agree that they got a little bit lucky, and Kanavi did a little Kanavi, and you know, they responded well, they defended well, they had the Pantheon pick, which allows you to play defensively around your Aegis, and then later, you know, if you start to get ahead and you're winning those skirmishes, take over the whole map. So it's a world where, like, if a few of those early fights go just slightly differently, Hanwha actually just 2-0s and we haven't get to see a game 3. I don't think this fixes the Doran problem, but I also don't think that you can pull Hete and Painter in all of a sudden, all at once. Maybe this is a slow, step-by-step process where T1 are like, all right, well, once we get Painter comfortable, you know, we'll see if we want to try Hete out as well, because he's got experience with Painter. The team feels comfortable with Painter now. We slot Hete in, and then we see what happens. Because the way I always looked at this T1 Challengers roster is like, well, there's no way they're going to play against the boy or to replace the boy band, right? Like, there's just no way. Even if they're better, it's just not worth it for T1 because they're still competitive without them. So I always just thought this T1 Challengers roster is not even a reserve. It's just these players will be sold to the highest bidder later, and that's awesome for T1, and they've done a really good job of building that and fostering that. But my read was wrong, I think, actually, as we've seen how they utilize this team in KeSPA Cup into now putting Painter in. So what's interesting to me, too, is you mentioned how T1 did such a good job of PR setting this up. But Oner also seems to be in good spirits. We had that one camera shot that it seemed intentional by production, but I don't know. But we saw him in the coaching booth behind Tom, I think it was, like in one wider shot we had, which was it was just so unusual to see Oner there, right? And he looked like he just looked out of place. It's like, well, that's not where Oner goes. Oner goes on the stage. But he didn't look like depressed. I think what happened with Guma was there was a lot of fanning of the flames, right? And Guma went on and made some statements that kind of made it seem like he was pretty upset about the situation. And that made people either mad at Guma for being that way or more commonly mad at T1 for their decision. And Oner's just been quiet. You know, he looks good on camera. He's smiling. He's a team player. And I think that's no shade on Guma or anything, but I think that's kind of who Oner is. Like, he's happy to step aside for them to try something. Obviously, no competitor wants to sit on the bench, period. That's not who competitors are. But I feel like Oner is like, well, we'll see what happens, you know? And I'm Oner, by the way. So if I get pushed out of here long term, like, I think I'm fine. Oner's always been the guy who's like, I want to be a career T1 player. And maybe right now that means for him to, like, step aside for a minute and refocus up to earn his spot back. Either way, I just feel like the way Oner has handled it and the way that the fans have handled it feels different this time, even though they lost in a big matchup. People were mad at the end, being like, well, I knew Oner was better. I saw crazy comments, but it felt so small in scale compared to what happened when Guma and Smash were being subbed around. And obviously, like, the even larger controversies of, like, T1 losing Zeus in the past and the surrounding arguments about that, which were, you know, that was one of the biggest controversies in, like, the last decade of League of Legends. Even though it wasn't a controversy, it was just a player trade, but fans made it into a controversy. So I feel overall like everything is healthy. T1 made a substitution. Everything's not on fire. He played pretty well, but it's his first time, and it's against one of the best teams in the league, if not the best team in the league. We don't know. We currently do not know who the best team in the league is. So, like, Hanwha lost to Gen.G, but then, you know, they beat T1. It's all in flux right now. It's a volatile meta. It's just a volatile league and an ecosystem. We'll get to more of that later. But I feel like Painter deserves more time. I think Oner is not going to rot away if he gives him more playtime. I think Oner is a very mature player who can handle it. And it seems like the fans are overall just being, for the most part, chill about it too. And everyone's kind of like, well, let's see. You know, and that's great. Like, I the fact that not everything is on fire right now feels cool. I'm like, wow, they just hit it from the fans correctly, they announced it first without shocking anybody and freaking anybody out and said, this is a coaching decision. This is a strategical choice. We're going to roll with this. They lost, made the same statements. He will continue to play. They didn't hide anything. They didn't dance around it. There was no BS or anything. And, like, they just moved on, and everyone seems to be, for the most part, accepting where things are right now, which is unheard of. But I just feel like as an industry and as a moment here, this rarely happens, and I feel very happy that it's not just a clown show, because it's usually a clown show. So I'm I'm very cool with the situation.
You know us, we're willing to, you know, call things out, but to take the time to call out the good is great. So I think it was mature. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Who knows? Maybe if there's like a game 5 and they leave Painter in, regardless if they win or lose, especially if they lose, but regardless, like, imagine if they win and they left Painter in, how the fans will react. But right now, I think cooler heads have prevailed. And honestly, I think everyone's been a little too lax on him. I think he played like shit in game 3. Like, everyone's giving him a pass on game 3. I'm like, game 3 was all him. Like, if we're going to attribute all the shot calling and all that stuff to him in game 1 when they were dominant, and he, as you said, he escapes with 10 HP and the game is like so different, then you have to attribute the 2 early fights he took on Nocturne in game 3, where he calls in the team to take this Drake and they get destroyed. And that's basically all of the proactive League of Legends you get to play. Yes, they dragged out the game. Yes, I think it was close there until at the end, but they were on the back foot in a composition that isn't supposed to be on the back foot when you're playing Nocturne. And then in game 2, when they've been given the cheat code jungler Lee Sin, it's like, all right, Lee Sin, make it happen. He was like 0-0-1 when they were pushing the fountain. So to me, I'm not that impressed. I personally am not that impressed unless you believe that his shot calling is going to be what the team needs more than the stability that Oner provides. So,
I think need more data needed, right? Like I
yes.
think that's the ultimate thing. And if they just decided this one series was a failure and subbed him out, then what was the whole point of any of this, right? It's like, oh, we're only going to keep him if he just gigablasts the toughest team. You know, like what are we even doing? Like so, you know, let's see. I think a lot of it is let's see how he responds to the hardship. You know, let's see how he responds to like the loss. Let's see how he responds to the fan sentiment, you know? Because that's, I mean, not half, but I'd say it's a large part of wearing the T1 jersey. It's the heaviest jersey. The fabric doesn't look like it, but, you know, you put that on, you go on that stage, you're instantly a celebrity, and it will follow you forever. So, you know, it's, he was just Joe Schmo, I'm the best jungler in challengers to, oh, this is real. You know, like, this is permanent. It's like a tattoo you can never get rid of. Even if he, like, goes to Europe or something, he'll the T1 fans who love him will follow him there, and the haters will follow him there as well. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Like, I think it's exciting, and T1 doesn't make these choices lightly, right? They've only made a few of these over the last 5 years, and so it's refreshing. Everything was handled well. I personally hope that T1 is bold enough to continue to make choices like this if they feel it's appropriate and do not be held hostage by their fans. But also the fans are not holding T1 hostage and they're just responding, I think, very maturely. So props to everyone involved. Good job, everybody.
Good job, everybody. All right. Speaking of having fans and haters that will follow you all around the world, one of the other squads that have done that over the several last years is Gen.G, who had a lot of haters last week. But then pop off with a very solid, very dominant 2-0 week, thanks to Ruler, who was also under a lot of criticism and was the subject of an anecdote from Arnold after their homestand saying he found a secret PC bong and was grinding out games because he was frustrated with his performance. So Ruler having himself a day, especially against Gumayushi earlier in the week, was a big talking point of this week. So, what did you make of Ruler's resurgence and Gen.G going 2-0 here, Wolf?
So, like, for me, I think Ruler had a big bounce back. I think a lot of it, he got a lot of attention because of that Arnold anecdote, right? And I think that made people really hyper-focus on it. But for me, I think one of the big things I noticed about Gen.G this week is an overall trend that we had in the LCK this week, but you can attribute most to Gen.G, is they slowed down. They played oppressive. We had that crazy Jin game where it was the game I dubbed the dubstep that doesn't have a drop. All right. That game was like quintessential slow Gen.G. Play very, very slow, play around Keen's Orn, you know, like get those ornaments up, play very, very carefully, never take any fight that's not a sure bet. And we saw an overall trend to most of the LCK this week following that. And I think, for example, Dplus did not. That's why, in my part of my opinion about Dplus this week was that they did not change their style up. They kept running it down, not running it down, but running it into aggressive pushes and awkward team fights that were not a sure thing when everyone else was slowing down this week. And they got kind of, you know, blindsided by that big trend shift that we saw. Hanwha Life Esports showed both sides, right? And that's the versatility I think Hanwha is continuing to showcase, is that they can play slow but also fast. But Gen.G overall this week, we're able to just grind through these games. And I'm trying to look at the game 3 draft between Hanwha and Gen.G right now, but it's not loading. But I remember in that third game, it was a big Ruler performance, right? And it was Gen.G just kind of catching the aggressive style of Hanwha and turning it around on them. And I just overall think Gen.G did a 180 here because they've been spending a lot of time trying to emulate Hanwha's style. Like, so we had Hanwha too aggressive early season, right? Way too aggressive. Not all on the same page. Then they figured it out. They're going to continue to play aggressive, but they're all going to follow Kanavi's calls. They're all going to go in. Delight and Kanavi figured out their jungle support synergy a little bit more, playing that way. then that becomes the big style. I mean, you called it basically before everyone. You're like, is this going to be like the best way to play League of Legends? It looks like it might be. Are they making the new meta? That was true, right? Everyone started playing more aggressive in a region, which is I think why we started to see a lot of volatile results and stuff like that over the last, even before we went to MSI, because everyone's kind of coin flipping and just trying to out hands or play aggressively and play through the aggression, play through your jungler, just fight all the time. And then Gen.G and other squads this week, including T1, took a little bit more of a conservative approach. Like T1's game with Painter against Hanwha, more slow, conservative approach, played through the Galio, played defensive around Pantheon's Aegis. And then they won that game as well, even with Painter in. So Gen.G seemed to be meta shift leaders this week. And so as a result, I think they did well. And I think that that's the kind of style that Gen.G has always done best at in the past. And yeah, the final game was against Kanavi's Shyvana. Finally got that one to load. That was the really cool game where they pulled out the Kalista Renata. And were able to pull that one out in the end, despite Zeus getting pretty big on the Mundo. It was a really fun game, actually. That one, Chovy, perfect KDA on the Syndra. And it's games like that series where you get to see the clash of styles directly that feels so fun for Gen.G. And they have always been that team that people call boring because they play the slow, controlled game. Their macro is amazing. And I think they felt pressure to change it up based on the meta shifts that happened. And now they're like, nah, let's go back to what we're good at. And it's working again. So that to me is the broader story of Gen.G, but this whole week. That really looked better, but I think that was just one small part of everything.
Yeah, I think that's a more balanced take than me, where I'm a little more pointed on the play of your superstars. It's like you need them to be performing, and I feel like Ruler, after he got over the tax evasion scandal earlier this year, found some solid form and then lost it around Road to MSI and kind of hadn't found it for a little while now. And so to be able to have a week like that was like, okay, good. He's still there. He's still got it. Chovy will keep chovying. And it's interesting because our teams have distinct identities right now, with T1 being a bot lane centric team, with Hanwha being a bot lane weak side team, right? As Guma is known for, and again, got tested again this time, and I don't think he did as well as he normally would. And then Gen.G, it's Chovy's team, but like you also have Ruler, where that is still performing at a very high level in a bot lane meta, and if you can make that work, that is easier to make work. So for him to bounce back that way was pretty solid.
Had that game against KT, that really famous game where they swapped the Shen top and then played the Kog'Maw Lulu that we've seen in the past, right? This little switcheroo. And they played this oppressive game into like Fenrir's Lucian, BDD's playing Yone. Looking back at this draft is actually crazy. I'd forgotten how aggressive KT played, and they just hard counted them. Like their draft is supposed to win early, KT's. And then Gen.G are eventually be able to crawl out of that and scale up, right? That's how it's generally going to go. And they were deathless in the game. Gen.G did not lose a single player. Not one player had a death that game. It was the most slow burn, but it ended up becoming quite a fast burn, actually, a sub 30-minute game. As they started to win when KT started to fight and they were losing people. I mean, Fenrir and Effort messed that bottom lane up bad. But Gen.G were just like, all right, we took a small lead, and now you literally can't even go out on the map. I remember KT like trying to clear vision in their own jungle and being like, nah, it's not happening. They have a Nocturne. We can't go out. And it was 11 kills to 0. It's an incredibly low kill game. KT couldn't get a single one. And their next game was 12-2, with Chovy pulling out the Galio with the Olaf into perfect Zahin, which I thought was a great response, but they just couldn't get off the ground. So just Gen.G bopping Hanwha Life, who looked really, it was really competitive, but Gen.G were able to kind of outplay them, play slower. And then K2 tried to play extremely aggressively around Fenrir. They were like, wow, it's working well with Fenrir. Let's play aggressively. And Gen.G's like, nah, we're playing the defensive style now. You can't kill us. And then Fenrir made a big mistake in the bottom lane, trying to set up Cuz. I remember the Vi play there. It all just fell on its face. So big style change. And KT and Dplus looked like, as Hanwha were like, okay, we're going to play both. T1 were like, oh, we're going to play a little bit of both. Pace is, you know, kind of a psychopath. We're going to play around him a little bit. But we got a new jungler in here in this other series. We're still figuring out, but mostly more defensive. KT and Dplus were still living in the Kanavi realm where they're like, okay, mid-jungle aggression. We're playing Yone Vi. And it felt like it just was dated. Like suddenly, just at the snap of their fingers, like most of the teams were like, I'm slowing down, and KT and Dplus looked like they were living 2 years ago or something. You know, they were in a different era, and they just did not find the success that they were hoping for. They found success against each other relatively, but obviously against the other matchups they had this week, they just did not scratch the surface.
You know, Wolf, there are teams that are vying for the top and a team at the bottom that we can link Gen.G to, and that is the DN Automotive SOOPers. You know, DNS were eliminated this week. They fell short of their goal of World Championship run, and their chances to make the World Championship were definitely hindered earlier this week, as Ox had predicted for them to do. In jest. But how do they tie to Gen.G here, Wolf?
So let's talk about DNS really quick in their matchups that they had this week. So they played against KIWOOM DRX, right, in their first series, lost 2-0 pretty unceremoniously. Like they had a few moments, but it was a pretty one-sided series. And we all know about the Kiana thing, and I'm not going to get into it, but it was not a good series. Okay,
best Kiana in the world, maybe.
He said, I think the quote was like kind of ambiguous. It was something like he knows that he could be the best Kiana in the world, or something like that, where he's like basically claiming that he might be. He thinks he has the potential to be, or whatever, but he didn't actually outright say I'm the best. But he set himself up for like do or die, and he died. Actually,
he died.
He died. He flashed miscue. He died. And then GG. But they lost that game, and then they bopped Nongshim. We'll come back to this a little bit later. They bopped Nongshim 2-0, which was a just hilariously stupid series that I cast with Atlas, where Nongshim just didn't know what to do, and Kingen ultimately like TP'd to his death, and the game just ended, and we were like, what is happening with Diablo running this weird like on-hit lethality build that didn't make sense, and we were just very confused about everything that was happening in that game, and nothing that Nongshim was doing made perfect sense, but neither did DNS, and they still won, but it was weird, and it was back and forth, and it was very Rise group, but like for Nongshim it really hurts their standings, right? So what happens in KeSPA Cup this week? All right, so we had some parallels. So KeSPA Cup just happened, and I know a lot of you guys don't have Disney Plus subscription. Probably going to watch the YouTube highlights of KeSPA uploads later. I know dGon's been busy all day, hasn't been able to watch all this, so I'm going to keep this as like focused and truncated because I literally just came from that to record this. Gen.G played against Hanwha in LCK, right? Best of 3. They won 2-1. They also had that same matchup today in the KeSPA Cup. Whoever wins goes to the next round. If you lose, you have to play in the final round of the day. So we had 3 best of 3s. It was a classic old Challengers Day. Gen.G barely lost to Hanwha. They destroyed them in game 1 with some really defensive play, but in games 2 and 3, it was a fairly close fight, but Hanwha ultimately got the better of them. So Hanwha move on to play tomorrow on the best of 5 that decides if they go to dGon. Then DNS, mirrored to this week, play against KIWOOM DRX again. So Gen.G won the first time in LCK, lost in KeSPA Cup, and similarly, DNS beats KIWOOM DRX in KeSPA Cup after losing to them in an elimination match for LCK. It's an elimination match in KeSPA Cup, and they win it. Barely, by the way. Super messy game. Incredibly low-level play. Like, low-level play. It was not good at all. Like, it was very silly, like, bad macro. DNS had a 10,000 gold lead, and it dropped to 1,000. They threw multiple times. When we were, like, making the jokes on the broadcast, like, I've seen this before. It was bro the other time, but, like, this is very familiar. And then they made a clutch play and won the game. Game 3, Rich blind first picked Gnar, and Dudu picked Tristana, and Rich died 4 times in, like, the first 8 minutes of the game. And so it was just done, and it was not a game. But the series was very messy, very ugly. So I'm just thinking the whole time, like, well, Gen.G's playing the third match of the day. They're going to play against either DNS or KIWOOM DRX. So Gen.G 2-0 either of them, and then they'll play against Hanwha again in a best of 5 tomorrow, because that's what's going to happen. Like, everybody knows that's what's going to happen. That's super obvious. and then they got giga blasted, they got trashed, they got dunked on. DNS 2-0'd them and just like made them look like they weren't even in the same caliber. And it's Charvel popping off with Peter. Charvel and Peter popping off with Bard Lee Sin. Peter's like literally walking up and baiting people in, and then Charvel's jumping out of the bush and insecting people and blowing people up left and right. Closer's playing Annie, and he's following up. Like, they have all the chain CC. And Gen.G just kept walking into them, being like, there's no way they're going to be in this bush. Or like, there's no way they actually make this play. There's no way they're this crazy. There's no way Charvel is hiding behind our wolf camp. Like, but he is. And he's like ward hopping in and kicking Chovy. And like, they got destroyed. And Duckdom was playing a good game. It was on Caitlyn in the first game. And it's going incredibly well. They're popping off. By the way, it's Heimerdinger. To the blind Olaf. So Heimerdinger gets played by Keen. I believe in game 1. I'm fact checking myself, and I literally just came from this because I want to make sure that I actually get this right. But I'm pretty sure in game 1 it was the Heimerdinger. In game 2, they played Charvel's Kiana again. And in game 2, it was an absolute, it was nasty. Charvel popped off. He did flash miss a Q again in the top lane, which was very funny, but he did ultimately come back. He ended up, I think, on 9 kills at the end of the game. And I'm pulling this up right now. It was, I don't know why this website is loading so slow for me, but it was, I know it was Heimerdinger in game 1 into the Olaf. I want to show the entire draft. So Olaf versus Heimerdinger. Charvel was on the Lee Sin with the Annie I talked about in the Duckdom Caitlyn with Peter's Bard, and it was Ruler on Lucian he was 0-4. He got destroyed in the game. They didn't play through the top side at all because it was, Olaf playing into Heimerdinger, so Keen like just auto wins that matchup. But the Heimerdinger could never get set up because they had full control over the map. They literally sent 4 people top at one point with the Caitlyn when Gen.G were pushing mid. They're like, no, we're gonna outpush you. You can't defend this. They opened up like the inhibitor turret. They were just playing a sick macro game. They had such control. Game 2, Charvel 9-1-9 on the Kiana, dies a single time in the game. Closer's playing Ahri, Duckdom's playing Jhin, and Peter has an amazing Camille game. But Charvel keeps getting 3-man ults. He's jumping out of the bush. Chovy built Kanik Rookern on the Galio because he's playing into Ahri and Rumble. So you think, okay, that's a lot of magic resistance required. But then he just keeps getting slammed by Charvel over and over and over again, who's just following Chovy around the map, and he's farming first strike gold off of him. It was a bad game for Gen.G. They did not play well. Canyon kept like face checking. Chovy was playing disrespectfully. He face checked in the top lane where he knew that Peter was, and then ended up getting caught there and died. It was just a messy game. Dudu was hitting equalizers everywhere. Keen was losing the matchup Jace into Rumble to Dudu without that much jungle intervention until the top side became where all the action was. There's a lot to say. That DN Supers just beat Gen.G 2-0. Valdez and I were casting it. We lost our minds. Atlas took an off week on KeSPA Cup, so Valdez was filling in today. And he'll be there tomorrow as well at the time of this recording. And now DN Supers play against Hanwha after they barely beat KIWOOM DRX in an ugly series. They destroyed Gen.G. I left a lot of questions because it goes back to like what we were saying earlier. Like Gen.G changed their style. They had a clean week. It was good. Ruler was looking much better, but it did not look like that in KeSPA Cup. And, Chovy had bad is strong. I think a weaker than average series against Hanwha. And people were calling him out in his performances in that first best of 3. And then they had to, that was the early one. Then they had to stay up all night to play the last one at the end. So they had the early match and the late match against the DN Supers that were warmed up after they just won. There was only a 20-minute break between DN Supers win against KiWOOM and then their match against Gen.G, whereas Gen.G had been sitting there for hours and hours and hours. So there's a lot of extraneous factors, but like the end result is Gen.G's out of KeSPA Cup, and while DN Supers' run in LCK ends, now if they beat Hanwha in a best of 5, they play against T1 in dGon in a best of 5, and then if they beat T1 for whatever reason, they play against Nongshim in the finals, because Nongshim are seeded into the finals directly because they were the best performing team in their group, and then were able to win a really important match early on against a challenger squad because of all the roster shenanigans that were happening in KeSPA Cup. Nongshim just played their full roster the whole time and sent it and went all the way to the finals. because of the format. And DN Supers just 2-0 Nongshim this week. I mean, I'm seeing the angles. Like, bro won KeSPA Cup before. Maybe DN Supers could win it. It's not a good look for Gen.G. Gen.G fans are pretty furious online about what went down here. They're mad at Ryu for the drafts. They're not happy about the Heimerdinger pick. They didn't think it was very good. And I didn't think that DNS would be able to handle it. And I think maybe that's what Gen.G thought too. They're like, well, you know, this Olaf is shut down by Heimerdinger and DNS can't macro, so they won't know what to do. They played a great macro game, though. It was just crazy. And the end result for me about all this, where my mind goes, is what if DN Supers just weren't under pressure the whole year? If they could play like this, they could be a Legend Group team. So what the fuck happened this whole year? What even happened against Kiwoom DRX? Like, oh, we could lose this, or like if we lose this one, it's really bad. We this one's winnable. Then they play against the unwinnable Gen.G and play like the best League of Legends they played all year. What the fuck, dGon?
I mean, you've replaced 3 parts of the team that were there last year to start this year. And then you replace one more of those parts. And now Sharvel's win rate since joining DNS is above 50%. It's above 50%. Like, I think that's way too simple to kind of distill it down to Pioshik was the problem. But these stats are fascinating to dream about, I'd say. Like, Sharvel comes on in, and you can clearly see when they're humming and doing well, like most challengers teams, he knows how to close out the game, which was different than DNS. Like, they couldn't do that. And yes, they lost that 10,000 gold lead, but they still won that game, right? Compared to the demons that they fought in the past. And so I think Sharvel coming on in and being a staple for next year is great. It's just unfortunate that it's come so late into the season at a point where, you know, you don't have stakes to play for other than this. So maybe that's the other thing. Right now, we're seeing the 100% focus for DNS at KeSPA Cup, because now they're going to be playing in dGon, right? Like, next week it's down there?
Yes.
Or is it just the finals?
Tomorrow, the Supers will play against HLE online.
I see.
And then if you win tomorrow, then you'll be in dGon against T1 and then potentially Nongshim. So our potential finals are Nongshim versus T1, Nongshim versus Hanwha, or Nongshim versus DNS.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, but like, that's the format. And like, if you wanted to just get the free seat, the irony of this for these other teams like T1 and HLE and now Gen.G is they kind of just chilled and they were like, we'll show up later and do like well later, and it's fine. Well, if they had actually just hard showed up and brought their challengers or their main roster early, they couldn't have done it as early as Nongshim because Nongshim wasn't in Paris. But had they like really hunkered down and try-harded KeSPA Cup early, it might be them waiting in the finals and not the other way around. To where now it's like, well, okay, we're not going to have a Legend versus Legend finals because Nongshim isn't Legend. So, period. That's not going to happen. We'll have a Rise versus Rise finals. It's not likely, but it's possible. And now you're competing like for, oh my, I might not even go to dGon if we randomly get upset by DNS. Oops, we did. That's Gen.G's reality. So it's very weird, but I think they will continue to do well because they seem to be playing now with the mindset of like, we have nothing to lose. No one expects us to win. And Sharvel plays like that regardless. But when the whole team is playing like that and Sharvel's bringing that energy, he was like clapping and celebrating in the team house. And there was a moment when the game ended and Sharvel was like clapping and then closers started clapping and then everybody got hyped. You know, it was like he just brings some sort of energy there where you can tell he's got this infectious charm that makes the rest of the team just get like, they just get hyped. They get locked in. They're like, this is winnable. We could do this. I think the thing about Sharvel is he's still got that challengers in him, like when Lucid first joined, where he's just gonna take every risk and make every play he can. Like that flash miss Q is iconic, but it's also like who Sharvel is. He goes for those. He doesn't go, oh, we got a nice advantage, I'll just let it go. He flashes for the Q. And sometimes he hits them and sometimes he pops off, right? And like that, when you're winning, that killer instinct, that's the kind of play that like when Chovy gets caught because he just goes into a bush because there's no way he'd be there, Chovy might be thinking in his head like, this guy is so stupid that he's in this place. Like, why? That's like not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to be here. That's not on me. Like that. Why would I expect this? Because this actually, if I don't make this play, then he just wastes his time and he's an idiot. Like that's the kind of thing that like an older pro might think about some of the stuff that Charvel is doing, where he's like blast cone engaging in and all this other stuff. Where you're like, okay, how could I expect this, right? But you got to expect Charvel now because he's here, he's real, he's playing in these best of fives. I think they're not going to make the finals, but I do think that the series tomorrow will be more interesting than people expect. That's my expectation. That's my hope. But I think Charvel's here to stay. The number one comment on Reddit that I saw was "Welcome to Gen.G, Charvel," because it was like a big gap, and they were basically insinuating that like, you know, Charvel's temporary on this team. Maybe he should come to us. Maybe we need this guy.
Down the salary cap things before in the past, and one way to get around that, because it's salary cap per player, it's like how much you can pay them up to a certain point. If you go past that tax, that luxury tax cap, because it's a soft cap, you then are in the luxury tax where 50% you have to pay double the amount so that the player can get the amount of money. So let's say if the cap is 100,000 and you want to pay them 150,000, you have to pay 200,000. So 150 goes to the player, 25,000 goes to the other teams, and 25,000 will go to the league. So that is a consideration when you are looking for someone else, because that Gen.G roster is held together by the salary cap rules that have been put in place by the LCK. And if you need to make a change, which I feel like they're going to, they're going to have to make multiple.
I mean, Keena's leaving. Like, he's going to the military, right? And Canyon's contract expires. So, I mean, those are the ones that expire this year. The rest are until 2027.
There you go. So, just something to look out for. Who's going to tell him, chat, that while he was hyping up Charvel as that guy, he was basically describing Pyosik. You were describing Pyosik, but just not.
I really thought about it when I was saying it. Actually, this is what Pyosik used to be.
we got the Kia in the back, but we got the shiny newer model right here, and there you go. We'll see how DNS will fare not only tomorrow in KeSPA Cup, but for the last several weeks of the LCK as they can continue to play spoiler in the LCK. DNS sometimes stands for does not start, which is what you shouldn't do about your weight loss goals. So if you've got them for this summer, you need to actually hit them. Weight Loss by Hims is designed to support you every step of the way. And now Hims offers access to affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the new Wegovy pill and Wegovy pen, so you can lose weight and keep it off. Now, with Wegovy at Hims, lose up to 20% of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first ever GLP-1 pill for weight loss, so there are no needles necessary. With Hims, everything happens online. You'll connect to a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication will be delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. And it doesn't stop there. Hims makes hitting your goals seamless by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and in-app lifestyle and nutrition support with things such as recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. And even better, with a range of affordable GLP-1 options, Hims makes it simple to find a weight loss approach that fits into your world and your wallet if eligible. You'll get a treatment plan personalized to you and unlimited dosage changes as needed. I've used Wegovy. It has helped me keep the weight off and help me hit my fitness goals. It can do the same for you with their friends over at Hims. And so if you're ready to reach your goals, visit hims.com/LCK to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's HIMS.com/LCK, hims.com/LCK. Weight loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com. Thanks to our friends over at HIMS. All right, Wolf, a couple more topics that we need to hit here. Today, we had what should have been the battle of the surprise teams in the round number 3. It was KT and Dplus KIA. They went 2-0 in week 1, or I guess week 10. And then in the second half of round 3, week 11, they both lost their opening game, which means one of these teams is going to end up 3-1. One of these teams is going to end up 2-2. And I got to tell you, man, you were off that day. It was a snoozer. Like, these teams did not show up to play. It was very frustratingly slow by KT. I felt like Dplus were in control with no stress and no doubt in their wins. And in the loss, they pushed KT. Eventually, KT took control, but there were some boneheaded team fight decisions by both of these squads. KT tried to take like a 3v5 with BDD split pushing on the top side of the map because Fenrir died in their jungle. When they were up, they had all vision of all players. They were, I think, up like 2,000 gold. And then they just half-heartedly forced this fight, and Dplus are like, okay, thank you very much. We'll take these kills and take control of this game and never give it back to you. And that's what they did in game number 2. And then game 3 was just a slow burn of, all right, we're in control. There's really nothing you can do, and roll over and die. And KT just looked very disappointing compared to what we saw out of them earlier last week. And so at what point, Wolf, do you just rely on history and you're like, well, one of these teams is going to fade and one of these teams is going to make it to Worlds, and maybe because KT got hot that one time last year and DRX got hot that one time 4 years ago, one of these teams could make it. Can they be contenders in your mind before winning the title? I feel like that's literally the only time they can become contenders is like, oh shit, they actually did it.
Look, it's causing BDD back on the bullshit a little bit this week. Like, come on. I like that series earlier this week where they just
Gen.G KT.
They just went for the aggressive plays, and Gen.G played defensively, and they got owned, right? Like, we talked about this earlier. It's the meta shift that they didn't adapt to. Let's look at the microcosm of the KT Dplus series. Like, in all 3 wins, which team lost? Game 1, it's the Lucian draft, the Lucian Vi draft, the aggressive draft, the draft that has to get ahead, the draft that needs to be aggressive, or was it the defensive Pantheon Rise draft, the one that scales? It's got the Olaf front line, where Perfect dies only one time in the game. It's the slow draft. It's the 2-item Spike Ezreal draft. That's the winning one, the slow one. Game 2, is it the Nefiri draft? The one that's trying to play aggressive but doesn't have a full dive step? The one that has Annie Nefiri that's trying to burst down Showmaker, or a Xin that has Crescent Guard with a Shen for defensive ultimates? No, that draft isn't winning. It's the slower one from Dplus. And the 17-7 kill, 32-minute slower game. Same story game 3. Now, game 3, a little bit different from the other two because you had the Mel bottom lane, which, why are we still doing that? What's going on with that? I get it in terms of the matchup they were trying to look for there, but you're also playing Yone. You're playing Yone, Rumble, and your combo base, and you're playing into a draft that has both engage and also disengage. You're playing Yone into Renata, and teams just keep falling into this Kalista trap over and over again this week. And Smash 0 deaths, Showmaker 0 deaths, controlled game, 4 kills total for KT. The defensive style wins again. Both teams played aggressively in this series at moments, but I'm talking about an overarching style of which comps are winning. Like, it's not Yone right now. It's not. That's what we figured out. That's what teams have figured out. Smash is playing Kalista. He's like, many people think about Kalista too. They think early game draft, but that's not necessarily how it works. It's just prio and oppression and slow. And you got the defensive Renata. You got bailout if they try to challenge you. And suddenly Smash has 9 kills. He takes over the game, right? Like, I think people might misunderstand, like, what? Kalista's the early game comp. Well, with a Renata and a Cassante and how, like, compared to KT's draft, it's not actually. So I think this is more of a product of these teams failing to adapt this week a little bit. Like, the fact that Fenrir's playing Mel bottom lane is, we're also, Fenrir shouldn't be playing mages, in my opinion. Like, it's not his skill set. I just think the drafting was off in on both sides at times, and then in their series previously in the week, they got Giga blasted as well. I don't think this necessarily means the hype is dead for these two teams. or that we overreacted. I just think it's a bad week for them. The same way they had a good week last week where they just surprised both teams they play. Like both of them got the 2-0 week and surprised everybody, like kind of 4 times over across the two teams. And so next week will be different. And I'm gonna take a look at their matchups for next week as well, because that's the question is like, what will they do to adapt as they move into round 4? KT plays against Dplus again. I can't believe I forgot that because that was a big narrative point this week as they go straight back into the same thing. So that's a fun one for both teams. See how they adapted and then against each other. And then KT play against Hanwha and Dplus play against T1. So it's obviously it's a tough week no matter what. When you guys are the bottom teams in the Legend group, no matter what game you're playing, it's not going to be easy. But we have seen KT succeed in the past, in these tough matchups when they have the right read and when everyone's on the same page. I don't think it's individual issues, personally. I think it's just a team-wide decision and direction. And it's BDD and Cuz a little bit for KT that I don't know. It's been ups and downs where they just kind of flip it sometimes. Sometimes they literally win the game together like that, and then other times just look silly together and they ride together, die together, I guess.
But that's not where you need to be right now this late in the season, I mean, honestly, we could say that about every team. It's just so unique that we have all those teams separated by one series. And I think because, I think globally about League, like this feels like the most vulnerable LCK there is. And we've done this narrative, I think 2 weeks ago, but I was hoping that, okay, by the end of round 3, teams are going to fucking figure it out. One team is going to be like, all right, all of you guys shut the fuck up. We're the number 1 team. And that just has not happened, man. And, if there was a time for KT to get back on that perch and be the only other team to win an LCK title other than Hanwha and Gen.G in the recent history, and T1, I guess T1 did do it a little bit afterwards, they need to do it now. They need to do it now. And it just feels like we're Fenrir's in. We're going to ask him to play Mel. It's like, all right, well, that wasn't even that much of a Mel draft. We're just kind of defaulting to strong mages for some reason. All right, we're going to opt into this fight. But you asked him to play Mel. Like, what? You can't. He's not there. And he's on the top side of what are we doing? And so it just, and then things like DNS looking like a Legend group team against Gen.G. I think just the state of the Legend group is frustrating. And I didn't realize this kind of frustration could exist because, we're always like, it's T1 Gen.G again and maybe Hanwha. But now I'm like, everyone's... I think I just need to relearn how to enjoy League of Legends when it's not mistake-free, when it's expression abound, and they are trying things that they don't fully understand yet, which is creativity. We're seeing the creativity live. And sometimes that creativity isn't great. Like when we're trying to come up with a title for our episode or the thumbnail. It's like,
it's unfamiliar, right? Like this whole situation is very unfamiliar to us. We usually have 2 teams, sometimes only 1 team that is very clearly the best. But to have 3 teams plus 2 that sometimes are also in the best, because like last week we were like, we have 5 teams that are the best, maybe. I don't know. And then this week it looks like 3, but next week it might look like 1 again. It might look like 5. We don't know. But I think it's okay to, like you said, just soak in the moment. And because in the past we'd be like, oh, it's T1 Gen.G again. I'm so over it. And now that it's not, we're like, I'm kind of looking for like T1 versus Gen.G again. I'm looking for the best teams. Like, what's going on? Yeah. There's no stability and it's unfamiliar territory. But I think this is like what most sports regular seasons are like. You have favorites, but it matters about your form on the day. It's your form on the day, your read on the matchup. Sometimes it's like injury dependent. One of your players was at an injury, wasn't able to play, whatever the case may be. But that volatility is normal. Our region, less so than the other regions, I think, was more stable. And we always had like a very clear tier list. And I myself have been asking for the tier list to go away and for it to be more interesting and people to be able to upset every day for years. And it's actually finally here. And I still feel uncomfortable, like you're saying. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. I don't like it. Is everybody bad? Like that's kind of like where your mind goes. Like if anybody could be anyone, we're all shit, right? Like that's not good, but that's not actually what's going on. I think it's just we're seeing small shifts, we're seeing small experimentation, like you're saying, and it's actually exciting and it's hype. And because we have a double elimination playoff bracket as well, I think we are eventually gonna, basically like cut the chaff and figure out who is really the best in the end. But it could also be that the LCK champion is the one that's the best over the course of 3 best of 5s randomly, who has a good meta read and a good trend read, and they win the whole thing. But that's the game. That's sports, right? Like that's how it goes, and I think that's okay. I think a lot of the time people overreact because their favorite team is suddenly who like KT, for example. KT fans have had a crazy one where they're like, we're the best team. Oh, we're the second best team. Oh, we're the worst team in Legend Group. Oh, we're the best team in Legend Group. We're back. We're so back. Oh, we're so not back. Like, the instability it'll drive you crazy. Same with T1. Like we're on the way up. We're maybe the best. Oh, we lost to the team that's in first place, and now we're not in first place anymore. Like it's very close up there in the first place. But you know what I mean? In their minds, like, oh, are we second? Are we third now? Like, is Painter permanent? I don't know if I like that. I'm not sure if I trust that. But that's cool. That's good. That's normal. I think this is good. I think a lot of the stuff we've seen over the last few weeks, people feel uneasy. People feel weird about it. I'm one of them. But I actually think the league is incredibly fucking healthy, actually, as a result of everything that we're seeing. Like, the fact that anyone can win on any given day. The fact that we used to always rock up with our Preds being like, oh, Chronicler got a 10 out of 10, but everybody else got 8 out of 10. And then like, oh, Hooney had a bad week. He's 6 out of 10 or whatever the case may be. I took a risk. But like, people would have these reads and they take a risk and everyone's like, no, the league is so obvious. You idiot. You got 6 out of 10 Preds. You're so off base. You're crazy. And now we're looking at like 6 out of 10 looks God tier because nobody knows what's going on. And that's awesome. The fact that it's not just set in stone, the fact that it's not just so transparent. And like our Preds are so bad this week, I think, because there was a big shift, right? From week to week. That's a good thing. That's progress for teams. And for some teams, regression. But that's how we move forward. So I think if you're an LCK fan and not a fan of any particular team, this is the best last 2 weeks of your life. If you're a fan of a particular team that's trending downward, it's not going to feel great. But I think that's sports.
It is sports. Hey, man. Even as a bro, that was a stressful round. Going 0-2 and then getting flamed because I predicted 1-1 because I just saw my Hanjin Brion squad lose to last place DNS. And then end up on this side of it. Feels great. I love sports. Let's get into Preds this week as we are pushed up on about an hour and we're going to try to do better than what we did last week. How many did you end up with, Wolf? Do you remember?
I think I'm 2 or 3 out of 10 this week.
I think I was 3. It was a bloodbath out there. A bloodbath. Let's see. Nongshim, T1, no. Bro beating BNK, no. Gen.G, yes. Got the Gen.G one correct. The T1 one, that was correct. Kiwoom DNS, no. Gen.G Hanwha, I think that was a no. And bro, oh god, that was a brutal ass week. All right, let's do better. Let's start off with your KeSPA Cup quarterfinalists. DN Automotive Supers versus Nongshim Red Force.
They just beat Nongshim. They just beat Gen.G and they just beat Kiwoom DRX.
This is crazy. What a stupid hard one to go with.
But they just keep like when they're supposed to win, they don't. So like I'm tempted to just be like, nah, they won't do it. They're focused on KeSPA Cup next week. But no, I am going to go DNS. I think Nongshim they're completely lost. The series that they lost against DNS was close and stupid, but they lost, and I expect they'll lose again. Maybe they tighten it up and bounce back, but how can I predict that? Again, I don't know. People who predicted Gen.G this week, how could you predict that? I mean, you just like guessed basically. I feel yes, but they were a completely different team this week than they were last week in terms of style. So anyway, I don't even think I'm that wrong about what I thought was going to happen with Gen.G this week. But if I lose this prediction again with DNS and Nongshim, I will be like, well, I mean, I'm the only one to watch KeSPA Cup, and everyone's like, nah, DNS bad, and then Nongshim wins. I'm like, they literally just beat them. So what are you even doing? I'm DNS.
I'm Nongshim. I am doing the look at their record, 7-15, and DNS isn't about their high highs, it's about their consistency. And Nongshim have proven over the year, in the face of some stupid shit they've done and some tough games they've lost, they've been able to bounce back. It's been generally either Kingin. Actually, no, it's been all of them. Everyone except Sponge, I think, has had a redemption game. Kingin or Scout or Diablo or even Lehens, where he goes 10-0 or 0-10. He went 0-10 last week. I don't think he's going to do it twice here against DNS. So give me Nongshim. Let me write these down because we have to submit these officially later. KT and Nongshim, or KT and Dplus. I don't know why.
This is stupid that we have to do this again because we just did this. We just talked about this. I'm kind of annoyed because both teams just looked, they looked like they had a bad read.
Yeah.
The question really becomes to me, like, which team is going to adapt faster? And I think the answer to that for me is always Dplus. I think Dplus is always going to adapt faster. I think Score right now has done I feel like BDD is coaching this team, and Score is not even involved. It seems that way, right? I mean, BDD told Aiming to get out. He's running the team, and that's good. That's not a bad thing. But I don't think strategically necessarily they can get it together quickly. They still have a rookie in the bottom lane, so I am going to go D+ actually. And they won the last matchup directly, so I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's going to be close, and it's KT D+, so it's always silly. This one was a little bit less fun silly. Like, it was a little bit lower kills, a little bit like a 3 sleeper boring games, but I think D+ will do it.
Yeah, give me D+ here as well. I think if there was one roller coaster out of the two I needed to get off of, it's KT's. Give me D+. Let's go to the next game. B&K and Kiwoom DRX. B&K and Kiwoom DRX. Jeez, the X's.
It's not looking good for both of them. B&K losing to Bro, but then beat Kiwoom DRX in the last series. But it was like, I don't know, aiming was out of sorts. And I'll be honest, I actually haven't fully rewatched that video because I was working that night and then was working all day today. So I actually haven't. I've just seen like the highlights of that game, so I had to go back and look at it more closely. But I don't know, man. Rich blinding Gnar at KeSPA Cup into the waiting Tristana and just having a real stinker and going 0-4 was not great. They didn't know how to play around it. I think I have to go B&K, but I don't. I feel like this one is such a toss up that who knows? Rise Group baby, whatever. Lock it in.
Rise Group baby, give me B&K. Gen.G and Hanwha Life Esports. For me, I think the Inform team. This is where I've been doing a lot of like my inverse picks in Legend Group. These rounds, I'd say. I think give me Hanwha here. Like, both of them coming off of wins. Gen.G, I think, are the most informed team, but I think their kryptonite is that jungle, and just let Kanavi cook. Like, let him cook. Let him invade Canyon. Let him do all the fun stuff. Hanwha for me.
I feel like I'm supposed to trust that Gen.G are going to play the more defensive style and win again, just like they did on week 11, but they just lost to this team in KeSPA Cup and then lost to DNS. Part of that makes me want to think that Gen.G just had an off day today and they're supposed to actually be better, and they were just playing badly online and they were off form. Because, I don't know, Ruler versus Guma. Guma's been looking a little iffy as of late. The light's been looking real hit or miss. So it's just extremely volatile. And my prediction rule is kind of always just look at the facts. And so if I look at the facts, I'm like, well, yeah, Han will win, but the circumstances of Hanwha's win yesterday or today, well, technically yesterday, it's past midnight now, and the circumstances of Gen.G losing to DNS, where they just kind of, I don't know, DNS just aligned with like some magic and luck and craziness, makes it really hard for me to assess. I think I have to go Hanwha, and like it's I don't trust it at all. But if you're predicting, I think you're predicting Gen.G this week. You're like literally just guessing. You didn't even pay attention. You're like, I think they'll be better. Cool. Where's your backup on that one? Like, where's I think they'll be better. That was like the Preds when people are like, I knew Gen.G would 2-0 this week. I was like, oh yeah, where the fuck is the proof of that shit? People who have said remember people who said 2-0 Gen.G this week? I was like, oh yeah, because you just had a feeling. Okay, cool. Yeah, you could just have your feelings. That's fine.
No. This one I think is way more defendable than last week's. This one you got to see Gen.G blast them through the weak side. Like that to me is what happened. So I think if you pick Gen.G here, it's not as indefensible as picking them last week. Picking them last week was more the waters, as we say. All right, let's go T1 and DK as we kick off Friday.
This
And this is the home ground as well. Yeah, it's home ground.
So both of these are in the KSPO Dome, which is crazy. I knew they had a home ground match coming up. Wasn't sure if it was this week or the next week, because we don't go to these unless you're going on an off day, which dGon has done before. But they both times they got Inspire before we did the Inspire finals, and this time they're KSPO Dome, which is a preview of where our finals would be. So that's pretty epic, and it's two really cool matchups. I'd have to go T1. They have the crowd advantage. Dplus is looking shaky right now, even with Painter coming in. I give them the edge here, and FaZe has been better than Smash in the matchups that have mattered in my mind, especially the most recent one where they 2-0'd. So I give it to T1.
So, Wolf, yes, I agree with you. However, I don't think the home ground bothers them. Remember, they did it at EWC, right? You know, they've made it their brand to ruin crowds. Like that's kind of tight to have going into the most hostile crowd that you could go into, even more hostile than a KC home crowd. That was a good prep for this one. But I agree. Give me T1. But if there's pie on my face on this one, it'll be delicious pie. I will thoroughly love it. Nongshim versus Bro. I've learned my lesson. It's Bro here on out. I don't care. Just Bro here on out.
What a miserable prediction to have to make between these two teams right now in current form. But I think I have to go Nongshim. I know.
That's a Waters pick, bro.
No.
It's a 2-game winning streak.
I think BNK are shaky as hell. And Kiwoom DRX are like the aiming hype train is over, so they beat Kiwoom DRX, but who cares? And like Bro had a weird upset win. It wasn't clean. Like they won, but it wasn't clean against BNK.
Oh, wow.
So Kinga needs to get his act together. Like I think casting Gideon can rock Nongshim's top side if they're not careful, because Sponge is not as close. Like Gideon is way better than Sponge right now. I mean, I feel like he has been all year. If we're being honest, Sponge has been like Sponge is the most consistent Nongshim player, but that was a knock on the rest of Nongshim. It was like, all right, but yeah, I think Nongshim are gonna bounce back here, and who knows? Again, it's all very volatile right now. But like literally anything can happen in this. It depends on the form on the day and who prepped better. But I have to. There's no way I can honestly tell you guys. I think with the caliber of these two teams, Bro is gonna come out on top in a prediction, even though they beat BNK, and even though DNS beat Nongshim, which with a lot more context now, with what DNS was able to do after that, it's an interesting thing to think about.
What is next here? We've got ourselves
HLE
the Saturday Showdown. HLE going back-to-back Saturday Showdowns. Will they go back-to-back winners on Saturday Showdown? 3-0 in my eyes, since I predicted them over Gen.G. The answer is yes. Like the KT roller coaster, I just never pick KT. I can't do it. I can't do it until they prove it. And there's not enough games for them to prove it.
I don't think KT are going to be. It's the same issue I have with them against Dplus. I just don't think they're going to adapt as quickly as they need to. Finner is just too young, and I'm gonna give it to HLE as well. I kind of feel like even though it doesn't necessarily work out to be like this, I feel like Guma kind of counters Fenrir's playstyle in a lot of ways. So I think that's also a bad matchup for KT. And Kanavi and BDD, when they're playing the aggressor, are just not as good at it as Zeka and Kanavi right now either. Like it's overall just a bad matchup, I think, for KT. So I can't predict them. This next matchup, I feel like I have to go DNS into BNK. It's BNK DNS. I don't know. I'm trusting. I'm just a truster.
On the SOOPers hype train. This is crazy.
I mean, I just commentate them having a great game, and it's weird and it's dumb because Gen.G also had a terrible game, but they just when they're looking good and the pressure is off, which by the way it's off ever since they lost to DNS, and they have won since then. Or sorry, since they lost to Kiwoom DRX, they have since then beaten Nongshim, Kiwoom DRX, and Gen.G. Who's to say they can't beat BNK? I'm locking it in. You know, it's once the pressure's been off, they haven't lost yet. Even though the games were really, really not, they were ugly in that series against Kiwoom DRX today, but they still won.
Give me BNK. BNK is fine here. And then let's close out the week with T1 and Gen.G at the T1 Home Ground LCK Roadshow. I have Gen.G here. I think this is informed Gen.G. Despite the DNS loss, they're able to shake that off because KeSPA Cup doesn't matter to them as much as locking in to be in the right form for playoffs and a higher seed in playoffs, given the fact that, I mean, look how close it is right now. Again, just all those teams there. It's a 2-0 week for Gen.G for me.
I think I'm going to go Gen.G as well because I think that by the end of the week, they'll have gotten over the loss and the mess that was KeSPA Cup. They'll be riled up by the crowd because they're, unlike I think Dplus, they actually will have a lot of fans there as well. Not to say that Dplus won't have any fans there, but I think that the ratio will be a lot better for Gen.G at the homestand. Not to mention that when you look at some of these matchups, like Faker has played a pretty risky macro-oriented playstyle around whether it's Oner or Painter of the Jungle. Chovy's been a lot more self-sufficient. And Chovy, I still think, is the stronger mid laner right now, even though Faker's had a few amazing games on a Kali here or there. I just trust Chovy will get it done here. And Keen's been struggling, but it's Doran. So I'm going to go Gen.G as well. It's a tough one, and I don't think that like I walk away from this feeling like if you predicted T1, you're wrong. I think this one's actually a little bit more up in the air for me. But yeah, I'm going to go Gen.G as well. I agree with what you said.
And then let's close it out. Kiwoom and Bro. The Bros are 0-3 against Kiwoom. Coach Song has not been able to get his revenge. Oh, he's struggling. He's struggling, everyone.
I'm gonna go Bro. I think Kiwoom are really in a bad spot. I don't like it. I don't trust it. I think Andil's he's back to bad. He's down back to his bad tendencies. Rich or Frog, it doesn't matter. Casting Gideon, clear this jungle duo. Willer and Frog / Rich get cleared. And UCal can get it done in his own, maybe. We don't know. But like if they win, it's UCal. And aiming, maybe, sort of.
Yeah.
I don't like Kiwoom DRX's form right now. We all kind of rode this like fake hype train when aiming joined, where we're like, wow, they look like a real team, except they were just beating Rise group teams in a volatile meta and not even that well. And then I think everyone got kind of the reality check in that BNK series. So,
well, there you go. We grinded through it, but we're able to get through our predictions this week. Nongshim, Dplus, BNK, Hanwha Life, T1, Bro, Hanwha Life, BNK, Gen.G, Bro. For me, I think we disagreed on the DNS. The DNS picks, and then the
You haven't seen what I've seen, okay? You don't know, dGon.
Yeah,
You didn't
I don't
watch
know.
Charvel do it today.
I've seen Charvel be successful, but I've seen that team be terrible for 2 years now, Wolf. 2 years. Probably 10 people have touched that team, not including coaches as well. But yeah, those are our predictions for this week. That closes out this week's episode of Let's Cover Korea, as we are 2 weeks away from figuring out who's making it to playoffs. Make sure to like and subscribe to follow along with all the action if you have already. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys next week for more. Bye-bye.